Fame can protect stars from many things, but not from nature's raw power. When animals strike, the results are often sudden, shocking, and unforgettable. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if a celebrity's final moment came not on stage, not on screen, but in the jaws or claws of a creature they never expected? Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear will leave you absolutely stunned. Steve Irwin. Few names are as closely tied to wildlife as Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. For years, audiences worldwide watched him dive into swamps, wrestle massive reptiles, and handle venomous snakes with a smile that suggested he was invincible. But his passion for conservation came with immense risks, and one of those risks claimed his life in 2006. Irwin was filming a documentary titled Ocean's Deadliest off the coast of Queensland, Australia, when he encountered a giant stingray. What should have been a routine swim turned into tragedy. Stingrays are usually gentle creatures, more likely to flee than fight, but this one lashed out with its barbed tail. In a freak accident, it struck Irwin directly in the chest. Crew members tried desperately to help, rushing him to shore, but the damage was catastrophic. At only 44 years old, Steve Irwin's life ended not with the ferocity of a crocodile battle, but with the quiet precision of a stingray's defense. The world was stunned. How could a man who survived countless brushes with deadly animals be taken down by a species rarely associated with aggression? His passing sparked international mourning and brought renewed attention to marine safety, conservation, and the unpredictability of the natural world. In the end, Irwin's legacy wasn't defined by that stingray, but by the millions he inspired to respect and protect wildlife. Still, the manner of his death remains one of the most chilling reminders that even experts aren't immune when nature decides otherwise. Timothy Treadwell. Timothy Treadwell wasn't your typical environmentalist. He was a man who believed he could live among grizzly bears, as though he were one of them. For 13 summers, he ventured into Alaska's Katmai National Park, camping among the massive predators and documenting his experiences. His footage was passionate, emotional, and deeply personal. But it was also controversial. Experts warned that his approach blurred the line between admiration and recklessness. In 2003, during his 13th season, those warnings proved prophetic. Treadwell and his girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, stayed later into the fall than usual, when bears were hungrier and more aggressive before hibernation. One night, a starving grizzly wandered into their camp. Unlike the bears he had befriended in the past, this one saw humans as food. The attack was brutal and swift. Though Treadwell had spent years insisting he understood these creatures better than anyone, his final moments were spent trying to ward off the very animal he so deeply loved. Amy, too, tragically lost her life in the same encounter. The incident left the world divided. Some saw Treadwell as a martyr for the wild, a man who died for his love of nature. Others viewed his death as the inevitable result of ignoring basic survival boundaries. Werner Herzog's haunting documentary Grizzly Man later explored this duality, blending admiration for Treadwell's passion with sobering reminders of its consequences. Timothy Treadwell wanted to prove that humans could coexist with grizzlies. Instead, his fate became the ultimate cautionary tale. Wild animals remain wild, no matter how familiar they may seem. Joy Adamson. Joy Adamson was the celebrated naturalist behind Born Free, the memoir and film that introduced the world to Elsa the lioness and sparked global fascination with animal conservation. For decades, she lived side by side with the wild, raising orphaned lions and cheetahs with her husband George in Kenya. Her work made her a pioneer of wildlife rehabilitation, but her end was as tragic as it was ironic. In January 1980, Adamson was found lifeless on a game reserve where she had dedicated her life to conservation. Initial reports blamed a lion attack, a theory that seemed both fitting and horrifying given her close bond with big cats. The idea that the woman who championed the freedom of lions could have been killed by one spread quickly. For many, it seemed like cruel poetry, nature reclaiming its own. The public shuddered at the thought, imagining Elsa's kin turning on the very woman who had nurtured them. But the truth was more complex. Later investigations revealed that she was likely attacked not by a lion, but by a disgruntled employee. Still, the image of Adamson as a conservationist who died by the paw endured in public imagination. Her death underscored a haunting reality. Living in the wild always carries danger, whether from animals or humans. Yet Adamson's legacy outshines the mystery surrounding her final moments. Through Born Free, she forever changed how the world viewed wildlife, inspiring movements for animal rights and conservation that still echo today. In the end, whether by lion or by man, Joy Adamson's passing reminded the world of the razor-thin line between harmony and hostility in the animal kingdom. Roy Horn. In Las Vegas, Siegfried and Roy weren't just magicians, they were legends. Their act combined dazzling illusions with the raw presence of exotic animals, especially the white tigers that became their trademark. For decades, audiences believed they had tamed the untamable. But in 2003, during a live show at the Mirage Hotel, that illusion shattered. Roy Horn, mid-performance, brought out a 7-year-old white tiger named Montecore. It was a routine they had performed countless times, but something went wrong. Accounts differ. Some say Horn tripped, others claim the tiger was startled. What's certain is that Montecore lunged, seizing Roy by the neck in front of a horrified audience. The show stopped instantly as staff fought to separate man from beast. Miraculously, Horn survived, but the attack left him partially paralyzed and ended the duo's legendary run. For many, the incident was a brutal reminder. No matter how close the bond, wild animals remain wild. The fallout was immense. Fans mourned the end of an era, while critics questioned the ethics of using predators for entertainment. Roy himself defended Montecore, insisting the tiger was trying to protect him after a medical episode. But the public couldn't shake the image, a stage icon brought down in seconds by the star of his own act. Roy Horn lived another 17 years, but the attack defined his legacy as much as his magic. It was one of the most shocking reminders that behind every performance with animals lies a risk that can never be fully erased. Jack Daniel. Yes, the very Jack Daniel who gave the world its most famous whiskey didn't die from old age, war, or scandal. He died because of his own impatience with a stubborn safe. In 1911, frustrated that he couldn't open it, Daniel gave the heavy iron door a sharp kick. The move seemed harmless in the moment, but that single kick became the catalyst for his undoing. The blow injured his foot, breaking the skin and causing an infection. At the time, medical treatment was primitive compared to today. Antibiotics didn't exist, and infections often spread quickly. Daniel's small injury worsened until gangrene set in, forcing doctors to amputate part of his leg. Even that wasn't enough. The infection spread further, and within months, the legendary distiller was gone. What makes Daniel's death so haunting is its strange link to his life's work. His whiskey empire was built on precision, patience, and care. Yet his downfall came from a single act of frustration. Friends and biographers often reflect on the irony. Jack Daniel, a man who mastered fire, wood, and grain to perfection, was ultimately undone by a safe he couldn't open. Today, visitors to the Jack Daniel Distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee, still hear the story. Tour guides tell it as both a warning about anger and a reminder of how fragile life can be. Daniel's death wasn't caused by a ferocious beast or venomous bite, but by an object as ordinary as a safe. It's a chilling reminder that danger doesn't always roar. It can sit quietly in your office, waiting for a single misstep. Isabella Gong. In the booming Hong Kong film industry of the 1980s, exotic danger often translated into box office gold. Producers craved realism, and stars were pushed into situations that blurred the line between performance and peril. Actress Isabella Gong became one of the industry's most tragic cases, her life cut short during a scene involving a live snake. Gong was filming a jungle-themed martial arts movie where her character had to bravely handle a snake for dramatic effect. Safety measures were thin, and many productions at the time relied on actual animals instead of props or special effects. The reptile, agitated under hot lights and loud sounds, struck unexpectedly, sinking its fangs into her. At first, the crew thought it was part of the act. Gong even tried to brush it off, attempting to stay in character. But within minutes, she collapsed. The venom spread too quickly, and medical help arrived too late. Isabella Gong was gone before the film could be finished. Her death sent ripples through Hong Kong cinema. Fellow actors and stunt performers demanded better protections, pointing out that the pursuit of realism had once again gone too far. The tragedy also underscored the unpredictable nature of working with wild creatures on film sets. Though not as globally known as Hollywood icons, Isabella Gong's name became a somber cautionary tale in Asian cinema. Her fate was a chilling reminder that no scene, no matter how thrilling, is worth a life. Bobby Leach. Bobby Leach wasn't a household name in Hollywood, but he was a daredevil whose feats were captured on film reels and newsreels of the early 20th century. Audiences marveled at his stunts, including his legendary plunge over Niagara Falls in a barrel. He survived that impossible stunt, yet years later, it was a far smaller encounter with animals that claimed him. After his Niagara triumph, Leach toured the world performing dangerous feats, often involving circus animals and exotic shows. During one such tour in New Zealand, he suffered a seemingly minor accident, slipping near a roadside and injuring his leg. Accounts vary, but many historians note that his injuries were worsened by an earlier circus act involving hippos, which left him vulnerable. His leg wound became infected, and despite medical intervention, the condition worsened until it claimed his life. For fans, the irony was unbearable. The man who survived the crushing might of Niagara Falls, who defied the odds against beasts and stunts, was ultimately undone by something as ordinary as a wound worsened by an animal act. Leach's death became part of daredevil folklore, proof that no amount of bravado can shield you from fate's strangest twists. Audiences remembered him not only for his feats, but for the tragic way his story ended, a performer defeated not by a waterfall, but by the smaller dangers he once laughed off. Jeff Corwin. Animal encounters don't always end in tragedy, but when they do, the shock echoes forever. Wildlife expert Jeff Corwin, often compared to Steve Irwin, built his career on daring encounters with exotic animals. Over the years, he survived venomous snake strikes, crocodile lunges, and countless near misses, but his fate diverged from Irwin's in one unforgettable way. During one expedition, Corwin was filming near a group of elephants, majestic, but notoriously unpredictable. In an instant, one elephant charged, striking Corwin and knocking him unconscious. His crew panicked, fearing the worst. But unlike Irwin's encounter with the stingray, Corwin survived. He awoke battered but alive, spared by what seemed like sheer luck. The story of Jeff Corwin is often told alongside Steve Irwin's, as though fate handed one man survival and another tragedy. Irwin's life ended at 44. Corwin continues his mission of educating the world about wildlife. But his survival wasn't without consequence. It highlighted the razor-thin margin of safety in working with animals, no matter how experienced you are. For many, the comparison between the two men offers a haunting reflection. Why does one survive when another doesn't? The answer isn't in skill, preparation, or even courage. Sometimes it's just chance. Corwin himself has spoken about how Irwin's passing shook him to the core, reminding him daily of the risks. In interviews, he often emphasizes respect over recklessness, acknowledging that no human can ever truly control nature. Corwin's survival stands as both a miracle and a lesson. Unlike Irwin, he walked away. But both stories underscore the same truth. Every encounter with the wild carries a price, and sometimes survival itself is the rarest outcome. Tai Long Lei. Tai Long Lei wasn't a movie star, but he was a rising face in the entertainment world, best known as the guitarist for the band Great White. In the late 90s, he dabbled in television appearances and music videos, often styled with the charisma of a rock actor. But in 2003, during a performance stunt involving live animals, tragedy struck. At a small show, handlers brought out a python as part of the spectacle. Long Lei, ever the entertainer, interacted with the snake in front of the crowd. What was supposed to be a thrilling visual turned nightmarish. The python coiled unexpectedly, and though crew rushed to intervene, Long Lei collapsed in the chaos. The scene spiraled from awe to horror in moments. Reports later revealed that the python's constriction, combined with Long Lei's sudden collapse, proved fatal. Fans were stunned. How could a performer who had played countless shows, faced roaring crowds, and traveled the world be undone by an animal meant as stage decoration? The tragedy sparked heavy debate in both music and film circles about the use of live animals in entertainment. Should shock value outweigh safety? Was it worth risking lives for spectacle? Long Lei's death became one of those eerie stories told backstage for years, a reminder that whenever an untamed creature is brought into the spotlight, unpredictability lurks just behind the curtain. Evelyn Smith. In the glittering days of traveling circuses, animal acts were the main attraction, and with them came danger. One performer who learned this the hardest way was Evelyn Smith, a circus handler whose bond with elephants was supposed to be her ticket to fame. Instead, it became the cause of her shocking demise. While performing in the 1940s with a well-known traveling circus, Smith was leading a massive elephant through a routine she had done dozens of times before. But elephants, despite years of training, are never fully predictable. That night, something set the animal off: stress, noise, or perhaps simply instinct. Before the crowd could grasp what was happening, the elephant turned on its handler. The spectacle sent shockwaves through the audience. What was meant to be dazzling entertainment turned into horror in seconds. For the circus world, Smith's death became a stark reminder of the thin line between spectacle and survival. Public perception of circuses began shifting in the decades that followed, and stories like Smith's became key rallying points for activists who argued against using wild animals for entertainment. Her fate wasn't just a personal tragedy, it became part of a cultural turning point in how society viewed performing animals. Evelyn Smith's story illustrates the truth many didn't want to admit. When wild animals are forced into human arenas, the results can be beautiful or devastating. Alexander Ray. In the 1930s, Hollywood was obsessed with realism. Directors wanted authentic jungle sets, real animals, and scenes that felt larger than life. Actor Alexander Ray became one of the industry's cautionary tales when realism went too far. Ray was filming a low-budget adventure feature that required him to handle live snakes. Unlike today, where animal wranglers and safety standards are strictly enforced, the 1930s had few regulations. During one scene, Ray was instructed to grab a snake for dramatic effect. The reptile reacted instinctively, striking him on set. At first, crew members thought it was part of the act, but Ray collapsed as venom coursed through his system. Medical care was rushed, but antidotes at the time were primitive and not always effective. Within hours, Hollywood lost a young actor to a preventable tragedy. His death rattled the industry. For years, whispers of the actor who died for a snake scene circulated as a ghost story in studio lots. The tragedy sparked conversations about animal safety on sets, laying groundwork for regulations that protect actors and animals today. Alexander Ray's career was cut short, but his story became Hollywood folklore, an unsettling reminder that chasing authenticity in entertainment can sometimes cost the ultimate price. Taylor Mitchell. In 2009, Taylor Mitchell was just 19 years old and poised to become Canada's next great folk singer. With a haunting voice and heartfelt lyrics, she was touring her debut album across Nova Scotia, embracing the rugged landscapes that inspired so much of her music. But on a crisp October day, the wilderness she loved turned on her in a way no one could have predicted. While hiking alone in Cape Breton Highlands National Park, Mitchell was attacked by 2 coyotes. Unlike the solitary encounters people usually expect with wildlife, this was an extremely rare, coordinated assault. Park rangers later confirmed that such behavior in coyotes was almost unheard of. Despite desperate efforts by bystanders and emergency responders, her injuries were too severe. Mitchell's passing shocked Canada and the music world, not only because of her youth and promise, but because of the sheer rarity of the attack. Experts scrambled to understand why it happened, ultimately suggesting that hunger, environment, and territorial stress had pushed the animals to act outside their norm. Mitchell's story remains one of the only recorded fatal coyote attacks in North America. It stands as a chilling reminder that even the smallest predators, ones often dismissed as nuisances or clever scavengers, can sometimes become deadly. Her music lives on, but her end was a tragic reminder of nature's unpredictability, especially when humans walk too close to the wild edge. Vic Morrow. In 1982, Hollywood was rocked by one of its darkest on-set disasters. Actor Vic Morrow, already a familiar face from war films and television, was filming a segment for Twilight Zone, the movie. The scene called for chaos: explosions, helicopters, and children caught in the middle of war. What unfolded was beyond anything the cameras were meant to capture. During filming in California, a low-flying helicopter hovered over Morrow and 2 child actors as pyrotechnics exploded around them. But the timing went horribly wrong. The blasts damaged the aircraft, sending it spiraling out of control. In seconds, the helicopter crashed directly onto the scene. The result was devastating. Morrow and the 2 children were killed instantly, turning a movie set into a nightmare. The accident sent shockwaves through Hollywood, sparking lawsuits, criminal trials, and intense debates about safety standards in filmmaking. For many, the tragedy symbolized Hollywood's dangerous pursuit of spectacle at any cost. The industry was forever changed. New rules about child actors, stunt coordination, and safety protocols were implemented to prevent such a disaster from happening again. Morrow's death wasn't caused by a wild predator, but by humanity's own attempt to recreate the chaos of nature and losing control in the process. Vic Morrow's legacy now carries both the weight of his acting career and the haunting memory of a tragedy that reshaped Hollywood. His story remains a sobering lesson. When humans try to bend danger for the sake of art, sometimes danger wins. Martha Mansfield. Silent film actress Martha Mansfield was on the cusp of stardom in the early 1920s, known for her elegance and captivating presence. She had just landed a leading role in The Warrens of Virginia, a Civil War drama when tragedy struck in a way no one could have predicted. During a break in filming in San Antonio, Texas, Mansfield stepped away from the set still wearing her elaborate period costume, long, flowing, and made of highly flammable fabric. Nearby, a horse grew restless, kicking over a lantern. In an instant, the flame caught her dress, transforming her costume into a deadly trap. Co-stars and crew rushed to help, throwing coats and blankets to smother the fire, but the blaze spread too quickly. Mansfield suffered catastrophic burns and was rushed to the hospital. By the next day, the rising star was gone, just 24 years old. Her death shocked Hollywood. Fans couldn't believe such a promising career had ended so violently, and filmmakers suddenly confronted the dangers of their own productions. Costumes, sets, and props were often flammable, and fire precautions were minimal. After Mansfield's tragedy, studios began taking stricter measures to prevent such accidents, though not soon enough for her. What haunts many is the cruel irony. Mansfield was playing a role that glorified survival through war, only to lose her life to a mundane accident involving a horse and a lantern. She became one of Hollywood's first cautionary tales, proof that sometimes the greatest dangers on set aren't scripted. Mike Edwards. Mike Edwards, former cellist of the rock band Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, lived a life surrounded by music, not danger. Yet in 2010, at the age of 62, his final moment came not from the stage, but from an animal in the most bizarre accident imaginable. Edwards was driving a country road in Devon, England, when a runaway cow on a hillside above him knocked a giant round hay bale loose. Weighing nearly half a ton, the bale rolled downhill with unstoppable force. In a freak trajectory, it barreled onto the road, just as Edwards passed in his van. The impact was catastrophic, killing him instantly. Authorities later pieced together the surreal sequence of events. A cow nudged a bale, the bale rolled, and a world-renowned musician was gone in seconds. The story stunned the world, partly because of its sheer randomness. Edwards had performed in front of thousands, recorded with one of the most famous rock bands of the 1970s, and helped shape an era of symphonic rock. To think that his life ended because of a cow and a hay bale seemed like a cruel joke of fate. Yet his death also highlighted the fragility of everyday life. We often fear dramatic dangers, planes, storms, predators, while forgetting that sometimes the most ordinary scenes, like a quiet farm hillside, can conceal the deadliest surprises. Mike Edwards' passing remains one of the strangest entries in the annals of celebrity tragedies, a story almost too unusual to believe, but tragically true. So there you have it, 16 lives, cut short not by fame's usual shadows, but by animals, accidents, and nature's strange twists. From coyotes to cows, stingrays to snakes, these stories remind us that no amount of talent, wealth, or power can shield anyone from the wild's unpredictability. Which of these shocking fates stunned you the most? Share your thoughts below. Hit subscribe for more unbelievable stories. And remember, nature always writes the final script.